Dr. Hutchings, the Superintendent of Schools here in Alexandria City Public Schools. And I am so excited to be talking about this high school project because I am a graduate of T.C. Williams. I'm like, yes, remember the Titans, everybody. But I do not have an opinion in this fight. So my job is to make sure that we bring to the board options to make a decision in regards to, are we going to have 2 high schools in the city of Alexandria, or are we going to have 1 high school, which we're referring to as the Connected High School Network? And the point that I want to make to all of you this evening, before we even get into our presentation this evening, is the simple fact that whether we had capacity issues today or not, right? Because as you all know, we're having a growing population, not only in Alexandria City Public Schools, but at T.C. Williams. We're projected to have 5,000 students in the next 5 years, and we currently have 4,000 students. But even if we were not faced with capacity challenges, we would be having a discussion around our educational programming, because it's important for us to know that if we're continuing to keep educating our kids the exact same way that we are today, we're not setting them up for a future, right? So I say that if T.C. Williams was the same today as it was when I graduated in 1995, that would be a problem, a big problem. So we have to make sure that we're continuously reevaluating our educational programming, how we deliver instruction in our classrooms, opportunities that we afford for our young people when they enter high school, as well as what courses we offer in our schools. So that is something that we must do continuously as a school division. But tonight we are going to be able to talk about some options that our team has come together with, giving some not only educational programming options for the board to just consider to get an idea of what these particular options could look like, meaning 1 high school or 2 high schools within the city of Alexandria, but also to give you some background around how we got to the point of where we are. So with that said, I want to introduce our Executive Director of Secondary Education, Dr. Gerald Mann, who will be able to give some information about the people who are here today and to go into our presentation. But I wanted to welcome you on behalf of the Alexandria City Public Schools, and I'm looking forward to hearing some feedback from you all and learning from you, just the same as I hope you all learn from us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hutchings. Good evening. Thank you for being here on this very humid Wednesday. I'm Gerald Mann, as he said, and I have a team of people with me, and I'll start with who's co-presenting with me this evening is Mr. Dawood Abdul Rahman. He is a project manager for the high school project, working with us, how long has it been? I think it's been at least since January. We also have Camilo Bierman, who's representing our architecture firm, working with us on sites and design. And then we also have Tiffany Nash, who is working with us for communications, and then also part of the team, our chief academic officer, Dr. Tara Zingo. So as Dr. Hutchings said, this is to give you an idea of what we've done this summer. When the school board asked for options to come back to them, we started an educational design team, and I'm going to walk you through the process of how we did some of this work. But the slide behind me talks about the profile of the graduate, and if you have, who has a student in middle school? Show of hands. All right, who has a student in elementary? Anyone have a student in high school? So if you have a student, these are the things that everyone has to have in order to graduate from high school. And we're showing this slide because all of the work that we did is ensuring that a student, no matter what grade they're currently in, will have all of their needs met at what either option the school board decides on September 26th to be able to graduate from T.C. Williams High School. And so all of that information is captured in what I've been terming Dr. Hutchings' favorite slide from our educational design team. And this captures all of the programming that's available to any student at T.C. Williams High School. And you'll notice where it says STEM, business and government, education, human services, and the arts. Those are terms that the ACPS staff came up with, but the items inside there are directly from the Virginia Department of Education, which outline what are called 16 career clusters, which are options for students to have exposure to. They could also gain an industry certification if they so choose. But in the middle, you'll see where it says core courses. You'll notice that there doesn't say world language, physical education, English, science, or math, but we're saying core courses are those subjects. So world language is included in there. Anything that they need for graduation is included in core courses. But what's the important part of this slide is at the top, it says essentially that any student, whether they are taking an advanced placement course, they're taking a dual enrollment course, which means they're dually enrolled with Northern Virginia Community College and T.C. Williams and getting college credit, or if they're a student with disabilities, or if they're an English language learner, or they're just Gerald Mann regular student, they have the ability to take any of the courses or pathways that are captured in this slide. So soon this will be the framework for us 6th through 12th grade, but currently this is 9th through 12th grade. And the school board asked us to explore with our educational design team that met from June 4th until August 15th, which provided some of the information that we'll go through in a second. But we were charged with also looking at alternative education, what we've called for this slide, alternative pathways to graduation, and also extracurricular activities. The work here was with either option, whether 2 high schools or 1, what would alternative education or alternative pathways to graduation look like? And so think of this slide as values. You'll see for alternative pathways to graduation that we offer students flexibility, that we also have specially trained staff and spaces for them, but making sure that it also leads to post-secondary options and also career options. And as Dr. Hutchins said, T.C. Williams is currently the largest high school in the state of Virginia, 9th through 12th grade. And if you Google T.C. Williams or the largest high school in Virginia, it might come up with Robinson or Lake Braddock, but they're 7th through 12th grade. And so 9th through 12th grade, we are the largest. But how many of us, if we went to college, went to a school that had less than 4,000 students? I know I was one of them. And so when we think about alternative pathways to graduation, we have students who may say, I can excel academically, but I feel that this is too big for me. And so we're saying that we want to offer alternative pathways to graduation, which doesn't mean you have to always be at King Street. That could be online. We do have students who actually don't go to TC. They take all their courses online. We have some who take some at TC and then go to Central Office for our satellite program. And then when we talk about 2 high schools, many people have asked us, what happens to the football team? Will we have 2 football teams? Will we have 2 basketball teams, 2 soccer teams? If the board decides for 2 high schools, yes, we would have 2 sports teams. We would have an extra, not an extra, but an additional band in the city, and so forth. Extracurricular activities and clubs. Many people may not remember this, but I'm originally from California. If I wanted to start an avocado club and you wanted to join me, we just needed to find someone who would be willing to sponsor us. And you'll see this past school year, TC offered 74 clubs after school. This number can rise and fall, but it also depends on student interest and what students have determined that they want to start a club for. And so at either location, whether we go with 1 high school or 2, the same process would be in place. And this is what the board received on August 22nd from the educational design team. And so the educational design team did a ton of work. As I said, our first meeting was June 4th, and we met through the entire summer. And this educational design team was made up of T.C. Williams staff representing the core areas, also the performing and visual arts. We also had Mr. Ballas, the principal. We had people from Central Office representing alternative programs. We also had our specialist for social studies who helped co-lead and facilitate the educational design team. And my role in the educational design team was just to facilitate. I didn't design anything. My role was just to actually be part of the facilitation. We also had a school board member. We had a current student and a former student, also in the educational design team. And this team, as I said, met all summer, but we're showing this rubric for an important reason. We started with values after we did 3 meetings of really understanding T.C. Williams. And if you think about how many students are at T.C. Williams, and you've seen our program of studies, and you've probably heard that we offer 400 courses. That's a lot. And the course catalog or the program of studies looks like something that you might see at a college. And we wanted to make sure that everyone, before we did any designing, really understood what is all offered at T.C. Williams. So we looked at 30,000 course requests, so they had an understanding of what classes were popular, what courses may not be popular. We also looked at how many credentialing exams where students can get certification. And we also started off with the fishbowl where current T.C. Williams students in June actually said, hey, these are things we'd like you to think about and consider as you go into this work. And as I said to the school board on August 22nd, this group laughed, they designed, and they danced. This whole thing for the educational design team was centered in cooperative meetings. So you didn't have one person dominating the conversation. They actually came together as a group. And the work that you'll see in a second represents this. But this rubric was important because they did some value work individually, in the small groups, and then as a big group. And they came to consensus that you'll see their first and number one goal value was equity, then followed by relationships and community, then achievement, student choice, and multiple pathways. And you'll see underneath 4, 3, 2, 1, this is a weighted rubric, so if you ended up with a 4, you multiplied it by 4, you ended up with 16. But we didn't tell them how or what the values had to be, but the fact that they came up with equity, which is an important piece for Dr. Hutchins' platform since he's been here, we felt was important to make sure that the community saw this. And then the last 2 boxes at the top are directly from the school board motion where they said we must explore the impact that this decision or the models would have on student achievement in subgroups, but also students' ability to access different programs. So the actual design work. These are artist renderings. On August 22nd, we had a work session with the school board where the actual design team members came and presented their work. And so you may be wondering this question. The design team, all we were asked to do was to present the board options. So we did not compare which would be better if we had to do 2 or 1. We did our rubric. The one that says option A was the top from the design team, and I'll walk you through at a high level what all this means. So this is our 2 high school model, and you'll see one high school is STEM, one high school is humanities. This doesn't mean that if I'm in the humanities or STEM school that I have to be in the STEM academy. It just means that I'm really interested in exploring the options that may be under STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And humanities is your English, your social studies, those types of courses. You'll see that it does say that we will have AP in both schools. The biggest difference when it comes to course offerings between the 2, we offer currently over 30 advanced placement courses at T.C. Williams. In the STEM high school, they would offer all of the STEM AP and DE courses. They would offer maybe, I'm making this number up, 4 or 5 AP or DE courses in the humanities. And in the humanities school, they would do the opposite. You also see down at the bottom, alternative program is still a core piece to what they were recommending the school board consider. In 9th and 10th grade, all the core courses would be the same. We'll have the International Academy at 9th and 10th grade in both schools. And then you'll still have Spanish in both schools. Our most popular world language, 6th through 12th grade, is Spanish. And then also you'll have the advancement via individual determination, which is a program we've been having, I'm gonna get the year wrong, but it's been over a decade. And we'd have this in both high schools. Then when you think about both high schools would have online learning, they would both have extracurricular activities. And so that is the major difference between these, but just if you're wondering, the educational design team did not make any recommendations around how students would be selected or split into these schools. It was just an option at high level programming for the board to consider. So option B, this group here felt it was important to highlight that equity was their frame for this, and I'll read this if you can't see it in the back. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And so you'll see at the top that extracurricular activities, again, you would still have those, and it depends on the school what those after-school activities could be. But you'll see in the middle where it says, and this is a Venn diagram, you'll see in the middle that both schools would have the core courses. They would offer full continuous special education services. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. You still have everything that you need to graduate from high school, but they also put in here that they would like this high school to consider project-based learning for the students. And then again, you'll see that then we have a STEM/AP/DE, and the other high school is an IB world language. And if you're not aware, Jefferson Houston is our only IB school in the division. This was continuing that pathway to have an IB diploma program for students if they so choose to continue that pathway, or once they get to high school, they decide that they would like to go for the IB diploma. So again, you'll have differences as far as the world language school. We'll have the International Academy and Visual Performing Arts. Both schools would have Visual Performing Arts, but this school would have more robust offerings there. And then in the other school, you would have our citywide special education programs, the Academy of Finance, and both schools would have the ability to have online learning as well. So the connected network, is everyone aware that currently students from Minnie Howard in the afternoon go over to take classes at T.C. Williams. And so this then just continues that, but it now has students coming back from T.C. Williams King Street over to Minnie Howard. So the connected piece here is that orange line, and you'll see that this design is saying take a building, they consider this Minnie Howard, and build the best STEAM being science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, that anyone could imagine for a high school student. The difference here is every student, including your severely impacted special education students, our English language learners, everyone would have the ability to take their science and math courses there, because you can't graduate from high school unless you take those. But also we would bolster our arts program. We wouldn't remove all of the arts at King Street, but we would have different spaces, and then also figuring out how we could do some blended work, so the students are seeing the connection between all of those 5 areas. And then at the King Street campus, you would, when you take certain classes out, you could then expand spaces in the King Street building. And then also they're saying here that they would continue to have an alternative pathways to graduation, as I said earlier, alternative education. We would have our early college, which is up. You don't see it connected necessarily because we're in discussion and working with Northern Virginia Community College, where we would have over 4 years, 400 students who are dually enrolled at Nova, and then also dually enrolled at T.C. Williams, where once they graduate, they would have a high school diploma, and they would also have their associate's degree. And so those 400 students, the plan is that they would take all their courses at the Nova campus, and so that's why you don't necessarily see it connected. And then we'd also keep and expand our satellite campus at Central Office, where students, if they wanted to, they could take a class at King Street or the STEAM Center, but also take classes currently on the second floor at our Central Office. So the last model for our connected network, this one is maybe a little easier to understand, but the connected piece is that orange thick line through it. And has everyone been to T.C. Williams? So if you're looking at T.C. Williams from King Street, off to your left you have Chinkapin at the pool, but as everyone is aware, you have all that land in the back with the garden and all that. So this design, to orient you, is build on the Chinkapin fields and still build something that is similar as the other design, where you have science labs, more career and technology spaces that are bigger and expanded. And then in the back you have an actual alternative school on the actual site, where the students, if they so choose, they could come all the way back, all the way down to King Street. And so you would then again have some of your core requirements, visual and performing arts. And then up there you'll see that is it possible, this was a question from the educational design team, could we tear down the parking garage and park underground and have more spaces above ground to keep everyone on the same campus? So their idea was, we have this connected network, but it's proximity, so there's no need for buses. Is that possible? And I want to point out that you'll see at the top it says that Minnie Howard is actually build a new sports complex. And so the one thing, as you're wondering, the educational design team did not look at sites. They did not find out about the sites that Mr. Dawood Abdul Rahman will take you through in a second, until their actual design work was done. And we were purposeful in that because we didn't want them to be constrained by, well, that's not going to work, so we can't do that. We wanted them to actually really think and come at a high level for design work. And then once they saw some of their designs, they were actually able to see that our facilities and operations department did consider, could we use Chinkapin? And we'll walk you through some of those site options here now. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dawood Abdul Rahman.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Dawood Abdul Rahman, and I've been retained by the Alexandria City Public Schools to be the project director for the high school project. My job is to make sure that the various lanes of work are all kind of moving along in a synchronized, coordinated manner. I come from 35 years of experience on the federal level, managing design and construction, site acquisitions, community outreach, leasing, and other kinds of development projects. This is my first time on a high school project, but it's really been a very interesting, and I'm enjoying the experience. As Dr. Manns mentioned, and this is very similar in the world that I come from to any master planning process, where you have the program, or the people who are ultimately going to use a facility sort of imagine what they need to do or what they need to accomplish somewhere. And then separate and apart from that, there's a group of people that goes out and tries to find land, buildings, or some combination where the mission can be accomplished. And so we've had a very similar process here. And at some point, they all begin to come together and converge, where you begin to try to overlay some notions for program and sites. In this process, Alexandria City Public Schools also hired a consultant by the name of Savills Real Estate. They're a brokerage firm. They do tenant representation. They go out and represent tenants to try to find land, building, other uses to meet their programmatic needs, and they're a global real estate firm. So they went out, and the short of this process and slide is that through various means and various strategies to try to find 20 to 30 acre sites that can meet this need in some combination, whether it's a 2 high school or a connected network. They posted advertisements in various media, they called brokers, they search databases, they talked to various contacts, they talked to private owners. There was no interest, there was no response, no positive response from any willing buyer, seller, donator, anyone who was interested in partnering with the Alexandria City Public Schools for any use for a high school project. So that's really the bottom line for this slide, and we'll be around with for about an hour to go into more detail about that, and there's a full report on this. But the short of it is that any land, any building, any opportunity to provide expansion or additional capacity for Alexandria City Public Schools is going to be on land that's already in the inventory of the City of Alexandria. That's really the bottom line for this. And really the short of this, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who lives in Alexandria, Alexandria is a urban area, it's land constrained, the land's very expensive. Even if you drive past a site and you think it might be available, you see a for sale sign or available sign or somebody just moved out sign, that owner probably or maybe have an idea for that site or facility other than partnering with the City of Alexandria Public Schools, all right? Because the highest and best use, and you can make more money, probably doing something other than working with this need, all right? So that's kind of the bottom line for the site investigation. Next slide. So what we realized, and we've partnered with the City of Alexandria Zoning and Planning Department. They're part of our core team. We meet with them on a regular basis. We looked at the inventory and we tried to identify sites that could be available for this need. Once again, ultimately there's going to be 5,000 students that need to be educated. The growth is anticipated to be 1,600 students by 2025. And whether the board decides on a 2 high school solution or an expansion of the current connected network, the sites that we identified that were available meaning they could be developed within the time frame that we need to meet the need. That's what available means in this context. Are for the 2 high schools, they are the Minnie Howard site, Hammond Middle School site, and George Washington Middle School site. For the connected network, they are an expansion of the King Street campus, the Minnie Howard campus again, and land that's available for school use at Potomac Yards that some of you may have seen in the papers. I think the thing to note about this slide is that you notice that Minnie Howard appears in both options, whether it's a 2 high school, which would be a distinct high school, or a connected network, for the main reason that the board in their motion was very clear that they want to see Minnie Howard used in any model. So Minnie Howard was studied in more detail for both models. For the 2 high school options, I think the big takeaway is that each one of those sites has the physical capacity. There is land available to house a 312,000 gross square foot facility with some combination of amenities to educate 1,600 students. So it's physically possible to put a second distinct high school at Minnie Howard, Hammond Middle School, and GW Middle School, and the thinking is that the middle schools would remain in place if the board chose that option. The middle schools will still be in operation if the board chose that option. So one of the things that would need to be worked out in further detail, and I think Dr. Mann mentioned that we're at a very high level now, is that how would that work if the board made this decision and you decided to have to choose one of the sites where there's a middle school, how would you manage the operations of a middle school and a high school there? What is impacted in every one of these options, whether it's a 2 high school or a connected network, is that each one of these, and a lot of you, I'm sure, aware of this, has open field uses or open space uses that are used by the schools and the community. And in each one of the development scenarios, going back again to the fact that City of Alexandria is a land-constrained urban environment, each one of those sites, there will be impacts during the construction phase, which will be about a 30-month period, generally, 3-year period. There will be an impact to the uses on each of those sites. So whether we develop Minnie Howard for a second high school or as part of the Connected Network or King Street or some other place, those open spaces will be impacted because you simply need somewhere to lay down and actually build and develop something else. And so those uses will be impacted, and we're having preliminary discussions as part of our planning with the City of Alexandria Office of Planning and Zoning to figure out how those uses could be continued in some other locations during that period of time. It won't be ideal, there would likely be some inconvenience, but the idea is that those uses need to continue during that period of time, but they cannot happen during the construction phase for any of those sites. So that's another detail depending on the decision that we'd have to work through, but understand that the planning principle that we're kind of following and we're starting discussion is that the uses need to be continued somehow during the construction phase. Each one of these sites, I'll just say, has archaeology issues that's inherent in the City of Alexandria. The George Washington Middle School site has historic preservation issues. Each one of these sites would need to have a real detailed look in terms of transportation, access, circulation to and around the site, staging for buses. I mean, all that planning after you get past the high-level decision and which option will need to be worked out as we move towards design and implementation. So all these things are true for all these sites. And once again, we'll be around for about an hour after this presentation with Camille Berman and part of the site team if you want to ask questions about the various sites. But I just want to give you the high-level outcome or understanding of the analysis so far is that any site we'll develop, we already have it in the inventory, there's constraints for all of them, and there's impacts that we have to manage during the construction phase, and they can all meet the need. So in terms of next steps, the next steps for this project, and really we're thinking about the project on any school project and on any major project, and this is a major project by any way you measure the project in terms of community impact, the dollars, it's a major project. It's at least a 5-year process. You're going to be in design for 2 years, but we're kind of looking to the next big milestone, which is the board decision we're hoping on September 26th, which is it one it's expansion to the Connected Network, or is it 2 high schools? And then some direction on how we proceed with the various alternatives so that we can get to the design, construction, more detailed planning we talked about, more details on the educational programming, and get to the point where we're actually meeting and delivering space on time between 2023 and 2025 to meet the anticipated student growth need. So that's where we are on the project. We wanted to have this overview be kind of a brief overview. Some of you may have already read the report that's posted online. We're in constant communication, as Dr. Mann mentioned, with the community. We had a work session on August 22nd. That video is available online. There's another work session with the board on September 19th that'll be streamlined, and that video will be available. We encourage everyone to make full use of the website. Everything that we've done with the educational design team, with our site investigation, the full report, any updates is online. We ask you, any comment, question, feedback, concern, criticism that you have, please make full use of the project email. We really want your feedback because we want to fully inform, we want a fully informed process. We want to do the best investigation and analysis that we can do so that the superintendent can put the analysis forward so the board can make a decision by September 26th and we can move forward with the project. So that's where we are this evening. Thank you all for coming out. There's clearly interest in this project, and we'll be around at least for the next hour to kind of talk in a casual manner about the project, but we really do want your written comments because we want to document that, make sure we consider that, include those in all of our analysis. There are comment cards included in your packet that we fully encourage you to use. Use the website, and we're going to continue with this process. Thank you.
I want to take a couple of questions. I think I saw one. We may want to take a few questions because I do think it's important you will have opportunities, I do want you to know, to have more intimate conversation because we're going to have all the experts for all these different sites here for you to talk to and have a more detailed discussion with. But I think it is healthy for us to open the floor for some questions with the open group initially, and then we go into our one-on-ones where you can come and speak to experts on something that you might be interested in, because everybody's not interested in every option. So people want questions or may want to entertain certain questions with an individual person. I saw you here first over here.
I noticed you say you have 4,000 students. You currently have 4,000 students in T.C. Williams, Minnie Howard combination. Yet when you do your calculation, you only use 2,900 students. So I'm not sure why there's a difference. And if that was 4,000 students, it would appear that the need is significantly less.
So the 2,900 students that you see, that's for the King Street campus. So at the King Street campus, there are 2,900 students. At the Minnie Howard campus, currently, we have an additional 1,000 students. And those are the students who are in 9th grade. And then we have 100 students who are at the satellite campus. So that gives you, right now, we have about 4,000 students who are enrolled in T.C. Williams right now. The projection is that there will be an additional 1,000 students between now and 2026 or 2025, I forgot the exact date, but within the next 5 years, the growth is looking at an additional 1,000 students.
But you give it a growth of 1,600 students, and you also say 100 students will be in a satellite campus, be it based on current, and 400 students are expected to take advantage of the Nova campus. So
yes,
your numbers for me are not clear.
Yeah. So I'll help you understand how you get to 5,000. So the 2,900 students are at the King Street campus this is for the projection, all right? At the Minnie Howard campus or whatever other facility, we're looking at 1,600 kids, and that is because we have 1,000 students at Minnie Howard, which won't be able, but remember, if we get rid of Minnie Howard, they have to go somewhere, right? So they have to be calculated into that.
There has to be a swing space
Yes.
while something happens, right?
Potentially. And then we also have the increase of 1,000 students. We have to keep in mind that there are 100 students currently at the satellite campus. They're still TC kids, but they're at the central office location. And then in the projected number, we put 400 kids at an early college, which is a partnership with Northern Virginia Community College. So when you put all those totals together, it equals 5,000 students, totals of 5,000 students.
Okay, but you're currently educating 4,000 students.
We're currently educating 4,000.
And your projected Nova and satellite campus is another 500 without any development whatsoever. So you've got 4,500 places right now, essentially.
So right now, we have 4,000 students.
Right.
And we're projected to have 1,000 more
By
over the next
2025.
5 years, yes.
Right.
Which gets us to 5,000 students. But as of right now, we have 4,000 students that we serve at King Street, Minnie Howard, and Satellite.
Right.
That's what we currently do. Yes, sir.
Sure. I just had a question about the size of the parcels that we're talking about in terms of the two high school options. What's the acreage? So the question is on the size of the parcels. What are the acreages on the three options for the two high school options?
What I do know, I don't have the acreages with me.
Okay.
We can certainly
I guess
answer that question.
So the thrust of the question really, it always seems to be a disconnect that when I came to the presentation here earlier this year, when I heard about the request that went out, it sounded like you were looking for 20 to 30 acres of land. Seems like what we've found is much less. So kind of were we asking the correct question when we were looking for other alternative land kind of to be used if we're ultimately going to settle on something? Because I know even on the 20 to 30 acres of land, that's much larger than the current footprint of T.C. Williams. So it seems like we're, kind of trying to solve for something that we're ultimately not going to need. And so we should be trying to see if there is something available of what we're actually going to need.
So that's a good question, and I'll I'll say this anytime I answer a question is please jot that down and send that question in because we want to make sure we record those. But I think the gist of the question is a good question because you're asking, there was a maximum of 20 to 30 acres, but there are also other options. We asked for buildings, other combinations of land. So even in the advertisement and in the follow-on discussion, we said in an ideal case, could you meet the entire need? But then there was also a breakdown for building, parcels, and other blocks because we were thinking about 2 high school and connected network options. And the response was, there was no response, but we're always thinking about there could be ways to, through either assemblage or other things, meet the need with whatever response we got from the market and how we ultimately evolve the program. I don't want to make that too complicated, but I do understand the question, and I want to ask you to please send that question in, because that's a good one.
One thing I do want to add, I just want to add to that, when we were looking for the 2 high school option, we also had to put in consideration acreage for fields or for any type of parking and things of that nature. So on our own land, we were able to look at what build, in regards to building, like what can we build on this space and still maintain the public space, and I'm talking to Minnie Howard right now, the public space that the city owns, like those 2 fields, it's not owned by Alexandria City Public Schools, that's owned by the city of Alexandria, but how can we still build as large as we can on Minnie Howard and maintain those open spaces that we also use as a school division? And then when you look at GW and the Hammond campuses, we had to look at if we were to build on those lots, we're gonna have to probably find some alternative space for some type of fields and all. Where would that go? Those are other caveats to the options that we've chosen. So whichever way the board goes, there are caveats to additional space that will be needed. It's like a ripple effect. You take something away, you gotta bring it back or you lose it altogether. So it's gonna be many caveats, but I think if we can give you a more detailed response in regards to the acreage and the logic behind that, I just don't have that details, and I don't wanna say something incorrectly that's on record.
I'm sorry, I got the microphone.
Okay.
So my question is going to go towards the school board's vote in a couple of weeks. So they're going to vote on which model, whether it's going to be the 2 high school model or the 1 high school model. Is that all they're voting on, or is it going to be a more detailed vote in a couple of weeks in terms of whether they want option A within that model, option B, which property, or is it going to be more of a multi-step vote? It's going to be progressing over the next few months.
It's a great question. That's a burning question too. So we had this discussion last week at the work session because our initial memo, we were asking the board to consider, to do a vote on one, are we gonna do 1 high school or 2 high schools, right? That's the first thing. That's the first thing that we have to decide on September 26th, or the board has to decide. 1 high school in Alexandria or 2 high schools. Then we have to look at the site options because we need to walk away knowing if we do 1 high school, are we considering Minnie Howard, Potomac Yard? You know, that's a question that the board is going to have to answer, and that's a vote the board is going to have to take on that day so that we can continue to go into the design phase. So on September 19th, we're going to have specific conversations around the site analysis and the site investigation with the board, so that they have that background knowledge going into September 26th. If you look on our former memo from last week, there was a section that said the board would vote on the educational options or educational programming, and that is more so guidance in regards to how we're moving forward. So let me give you an example. We gave the board educational options so that they can see what it could potentially look like if they had a connected high school network or if they had 2 separate high schools in the city of Alexandria. So these were options that were given to them so that they could get an understanding of what can an educational program look like. Once the board makes that decision on 1 high school or 2, we're going to be bringing back the educational design team and now saying, this is the focus and these are the sites. Let's revisit what the programming could be and what that can look like. That's going to be a separate time. It's not going to happen on September 26th. So the 2 main things that are happening on September 26th is 1, are we going to have 1 high school or 2 high schools? And the second thing is where or which sites will this 1 high school or 2 high schools be? Can you pass the mic down? Oh, I thought she had. The woman in yellow.
So, it sounds like you may not be deciding on this on September 26th, but a lot of these programs that, especially in the two high schools model, it looks like you have these sort of separate programs at each high school, and you've said that they will have that, you know, just because it's a STEM high school doesn't mean that they have to focus on STEM. They can do other things. But I can see that, you know, a kid could think, I'm in a STEM high school, I should be doing STEM. And I have a concern that they'll be specializing too early in life. I mean, I think college kids even don't know what they want to do with their lives. And, you know, having our kids limit themselves at such a young age seems a little bit like, you know, that could be an issue. So, I mean, how are we going to make sure that kids know that they have the options to take, you know, whatever classes they want and, you know, change their minds when they're in 10th grade if they've decided on the STEM stuff and they're, oh, actually I want to do humanities or something. So how are we gonna make sure to encourage them to kind of have a breadth of education despite what they're going to?
So that was why it was important when the educational design team met, and I'm going to allow Dr. Mann to elaborate a little more with the educational design team. But a part of their discussions was the fact that if we have a thematic approach, meaning a STEM program and a humanities program, that either campus will still offer these other courses, right? So you're still going to be able to have access, if you were at a STEM campus, to do humanities courses if you chose to do that. But because it has a STEM focus, you may have some additional STEM courses that are offered at that particular campus. I'm going to give you an example of some of our elementary schools right now that have themes. You know, we have a STEM program at Cord Kelly. We also have a STEM program at Ferdinand T. Day Elementary School currently. And at these particular schools, they are STEM focused, but they still have to meet the same, or they still use the same curriculum that is being implemented at all of our other schools. You know, Lyles Crouch has a traditional academy. It still has to implement the curriculum that's Alexandria City Public Schools curriculum and provide kids access to those. But those were conversations that the educational design team had, because you are exactly right. Some kids don't know what they want to do. I know I didn't know what I wanted to do, even when I was in college, changed my major, you know. But never thought I was going to be a superintendent until I became a teacher. But I do know that some kids may change, so we want to have fluidity in regards to course selections at both schools, so that you still have access to them, but if a school has a particular theme, it may have just more courses that you get to choose from. But I do want us to not get too caught up on the educational program, and I'm going to just tell you why. There's going to be another 1 to 2 years after the decision is made about one high school or two high schools that this educational design team is going to be working towards to establish our programming. Because there's so many additional things that still would have to occur. We would have to revise our program of studies for the high school. We would have to determine, you know how these courses will be offered at the particular school, what resources are going to be needed at the particular school, what the course sequencing is going to look like at the particular schools, what the selection process would be, depending on what option the board chooses. So there's so much more work that has to happen with the educational programming. We just wanted to give the board an idea of what could happen if we chose one high school or two high schools. And that was a part of the directive that we received from the board to bring some educational programming options.
So I'm trying to get a better sense, especially when we're talking about locations that are in close proximity to one another, no matter if it's the two high school or the one high school option. We could be talking about the same parcels of land, what the real differences are. So if you're looking at a two high school option, does that mean that if I'm in high school 1, I don't get to take courses at high school 2, that I'm really sort of stuck at that, I don't mean stuck in a bad way, but I'm in that one school and that's where I am during the day? Versus a one high school option where the presumption is that I'd be sort of traveling from campus to campus throughout the day. That's just sort of how it's set up. Would that be a way to capture the difference? Or if it's not, can you try to better explain what the differences are, especially too if we're talking about, if we're going to use King Street and Minnie Howard for both options, what's the real difference between those two options?
So with two high schools, right, similar, one example that we have right now is we have two middle schools in the city of Alexandria. So kids who are at GW, do they go over to take classes at Hammond? No, they do not. So the courses that they take are at the school that they're zoned to. If we're looking at kids taking classes, if we have two high schools, at one campus they get to go to another, then we're talking about the Connected High School Network once again, right? You know, so I think that the difference between the two is when you have two specific high schools in the city of Alexandria, they're going to operate as two high schools, standalone high schools, the same way our middle schools operate as two standalone high schools. I'm sorry, two standalone middle schools, excuse me. If we did the Connected High School Network option, then that does afford students opportunities to take courses at other sites or other campuses. Whether it's throughout the day going back and forth, that's a deeper discussion, right? It's not, right now the way our middle school is, the way our high school is for freshmen, is that some kids, they're at the Minnie Howard campus on A days, speaking of my daughter for part of the day, and then on B days, a part of the day they're over at King Street, you know? So we have ways right now that we're already operating that way. So I would say when you're thinking of the Connected High School Network, think of how scheduling occurs right now for a ninth grader. They don't spend their whole day at King Street, but there are periods of time that they will go to that other site.
So just to clarify, looking at the option A, so if I'm in the STEM school, high school, and I wanted to take a fine arts course, I wouldn't be able to do that because fine arts is only being offered in the humanities school. And I'm not tying you to, I'm just saying,
So
by
I
way
would
of
say
example.
no, I would say that's not true. So what I would say is that even if I were a humanities school, I'm still going to offer fine arts classes at that school. The emphasis, I'm sorry, at the STEM school. Yeah, I'm sorry, no, I'm just saying if I was at a humanities school and I wanted to do fine arts or, you know, the arts, then I could take those classes even at my humanities school because I'm going to be offering those courses there. The same way if I'm at a STEM-focused school, if there are humanities courses that would be offered there. So we don't want to think of if we had two schools who had themes. Because a lot of cities have themes for their high schools that limits, you know, whether your children get access. It limits maybe the choices that they might have. So it doesn't mean you don't have any courses. It just means that if you have a STEM focus in the other building, you may have, and this is hypothetical, 20 extra science classes. And then this one, you might only have 15. Right? So you still have access, but the focus schools have more for that particular focus.
Can I ask a follow-on to that? Can you speak to that scenario and apply it to the language offerings? Because from the diagrams I've seen, a quote-unquote STEM high school there would be Spanish cross-cutting both, but German and Mandarin would be provided at one school and French and Latin at another. So I'm assuming that if that's the case, and a student at the hypothetical STEM school wanted to take French, they cannot. Their choices are German, Mandarin, or Spanish.
So I think that would be too limiting and too restrictive, right? The students really drive what courses are being offered, and I'm going to use Hammond and GW as an example. When I was here the last time, that's how we operated, where I believe GW, did they not have German? Hammond, I'm sorry, Hammond didn't have German. And everyone's like, how can GW have German and we don't, right? That's unfair. And I believe we had one family actually come to GW to take the course here. But now we offered it at both schools. Student interest is really what's supposed to drive our course selections. So if we have students who are interested in German, we may have to put in, and I'm just using this as an example, right? We may have to have a teacher that works at both locations because we don't have enough kids now because we separated the schools. We may not have enough to have a full load for that teacher in one building. So they may have to do 3 courses, three sections or 3 periods over here and 2 periods over at the other high school. That's what school divisions across the country currently do. We just only have one, so we've never done it. So it seems foreign to us, but that's typical for most school divisions that have multiple high schools. The courses they drive the students drive the course selections.
Okay.
I don't know who's next, so we just gotta pass it around. I can't figure it out.
I had two questions. I'll say them both, and then you can respond to either one. One picks up on something that just came up, which is that if I were a board member and I realized this is a very long process, and at this point maybe the best we can do is put through these artistic sketches of what the different options are, they're so abstract and conceptual. To me personally, I can't translate it into real meaningful difference for my student to make an informed judgment. So if I were presented with these and walked through, I don't know the basis on which I'm really able to adjudicate that decision because nothing's in sharp enough relief yet for me to really get it. I specifically noted that there was no cost information around any of the options, and maybe there's other pieces of information that layer in later on in your process. You talked about in the documentation assessing for social emotional impact on students, assessing for other kinds of impacts on students. There's no demarcation about which of these things yet really are meaningfully different, and I think it's hard to translate it. The second thing I was going to say was that, it goes back to the gentleman's point with the white shirt. I'm not a demographer. I learned that term today. I was reminded of today when I looked at how other schools were dealing with capacity issues. I saw some articles from Arlington. They had lots of documentation about all the demographic data that feeds their models for where things could go. They use a grade progression rate methodology very similar to what we're using here. And they noted that these methodologies are really often very wrong. And they backtest their model to say that if they had used what their model told them in 2008, they would have incorrectly calculated the school by more than 30%. And so my question on that one, which is more important, would be who's really responsible between the administration and the school board for the accuracy or quality of understanding our capacity needs going forward for 2025 or later, so we can really make best judgments about whether it's going to be 5,000 or 5,500 or 6,000. It seems like there's lots of recommendations to keep a bigger perspective, and the last time I could see it on Alexandria's website was in 2014, when there was a lot of really robust thinking done about demographic trends and other kinds of things. So I'd like to understand both of those things better, but I'm struggling a bit.
So one, let me just say, I wish Erica Gulick was here. If she is, well, great. She can help. Thank you for being here today, Erica. But as she's making her way up here, I do want to say that with our projections, we have been, for the past, 3 years that I know of, that I'm aware of, 99.9% accurate with our enrollment, which is a good thing for us in Alexandria City Public Schools. So we are really confident in some of the projections that have occurred in regards to student enrollment. But I want to defer to Erica to give an explanation as to who we work with in the city and how we come up with our projections, because this is like the queen. She's the queen of projections.
I don't know about that.
You are.
Thank you, and thank you for that question. It is really important. We get that question a lot. It is hard. They are projections, so there's always a little element of surprise and a little bit of intuition that goes into them. But it is the same science that you were talking about in 2014. That methodology and things we looked at is the same that we apply every year. We do it annually. And so there's an enrollment projection process that's based on a lot of different factors, but we look at how many births were born in the city each year. We look at what development projects are going in, what's the time frame for those. We calculate student generation rates by development, type of building, age of building. It's kind of weird, it's kind of insensitive to talk about, but if you build a apartment building, how many kids are likely to come out of that building and come to ACPS schools? So it is something that we feel like we've done a really good job of. We work very closely with our planning and zoning department and the demographers there. We are a relatively small city, so it's kind of easy to capture all of those different elements. And I would say too, when you look at projections, so we say we're 99.9% accurate year to year, right? And when you look at 4 years out, 5 years out, 6 years out, it gets a little bit different. We have done that analysis too, and it varies by about, I want to say, like 1% over the year. You get like 1% further away, but it's consistent, and so at least we know that, and we're able to build in for that contingency. So we feel really comfortable with 5,000 as the student number right now, and we'll continue to use that going forward to make sure we're updating our methodology and our process.
No, the woman in the back had her hand for a while. Let's get her first, and then we're going to come back to the follow-up question, because she's had her hand up for a while. And we're going to take open questions like this till about 6 o'clock, because I want to give people time to talk. Some people do want to talk to our individual, and these people have prepared to talk about each option and topics, and I want you all to be able to do that.
So
Yes.
I have kind of a comment and a question. The first comment is about the idea that if we have thematic schools, we're also going to have other things available. And I think I should preface this by saying I'm going to out myself. I've been doing admissions at a high level. I'm at a top 10 law school. I work very closely with the admissions offices, a lot of colleges. And I can tell you that they may not see it the same way. When you put a kid in a school that's a STEM school and they choose to do humanities instead, there's going to be a few impressions that are made that the kid's going to have to overcome. The first is that they went to the STEM school in an attempt to try to impress the admissions officer. The second is that they changed their mind halfway through because maybe they weren't cutting it somehow. I mean, it's not going to be seen as benevolent when kids go to apply at college. And if a child is doing STEM in a humanities school in a district that has a STEM school and they try to apply to a STEM program, the question is going to be, why didn't you go to the STEM program? Which gets to my second question. If we have one school that's large and another that has 1,600 students, how do we equitably decide who goes where? This is a big problem, particularly when these sorts of biases, to a certain extent, when the kids are applying to college, are going to come into play. I don't see how it equitably can be determined. And I think that right now we have with the connected system that we have something that's doing everything well. Any kid who walks into that system has the ability to change their mind at any point. And if they want to do high-level STEM and do high-level humanities at the same time, they turn into a very attractive student. And the students who aren't specializing in one of those things, but they're doing a little bit of everything well, also a very attractive student. So I'm looking at the 2 high school model and seeing this as diminishing students' opportunities, and I'm just wondering how we're going to address the equity issue in this for all the students.
Well, I think these questions and the comments that you've raised, the board is currently grappling with. And I think that there are caveats to having 2 high schools, just like there are caveats to having 1 high school in the city of Alexandria. And one thing that we're going to be doing, I just wanted to follow up on just to add to his question, because we are going to have our site analysis and cost comparative analysis. That's on September 19th, so the board will have that. That's why we don't have that information here tonight, because we like to share with the board before we go public, so that information will be available after September 19th. But to get back to your question, I think that equity is something that we're going to need to address whether we have 1 high school or 2, right? Because there are inequities even currently in the structure that we have that we need to address and we need to get right. And there are also inequities that occur in cities all over this country who have more than 1 high school. So we have to be real about that and know that we don't want to go into any situation, that's either option that the board chooses, affording more inequities for our students. So I think your comments, well received. That is information that the board will continue to grapple with. And my job is to provide options. You want to pass it down? And then we'll get you. Who was over here raising hands? I didn't see people back here. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. The follow-up. You said you had a follow-up. That's right.
Yes. Related to the projection, I'm wondering if we have anything beyond 2025 where it gets too inaccurate to be able to plan, because I presume that these solutions need to last for a decade or 2 beyond 2025.
So when we collect birth data every year, that's really what rolls into what would become our kindergarten projection in the next year. So for all of your information, for those who care, we have about 2,600 births per year in the city of Alexandria. Usually 55% of those kids become kindergartners. So not the exact kids, but in numbers, that's about the amount that become kindergartners. And because we have that data up through 2018, through last year, we're able to say, okay, those kids would be in high school 13 years from now. or 14 years from now. So that's why we feel like it's a pretty valid effort, because all the kids we're talking about right now are already in school or will be in school in the next 13 years. Starting school in 5 and then in high school in 13 years from birth data from last year.
So again, do we have projections for like 20, 30?
Our projections go out 10 years. So this year we'll be doing projections to 2030. Next year we do projections to 2031. When they did the planning effort in 2014, they found that we were going to grow until 2030 and then probably level off. So that's why we feel like 5,000 is capturing that 2030, that growth up until 2030, and may level off after that. Sorry, I'm confusing.
And to add to Erica's response, we also have to make sure whatever we build, whether it is one high school or 2 high schools, that it's flexible space, so that it allows us to have some flexibility. Classrooms today, this is a conversation that we're having as we're building schools. They might not be the same classrooms 20 years from now, right? That doesn't mean we need to go build another school because they're not the same classroom. So we need to make sure we have the flexibility. Maybe somebody thinks we should. Keep the same classroom. So we need to have that flexibility to make sure that as time changes and our needs change, that we are not in a situation every time our needs change, we have to build something else. We can always add on, or we can use that space in a repurposed way or format.
Good evening, everybody. I'm asking Dr. Hutchins and his administration to provide us some examples of school systems very near here who are doing things like School Without Walls in DC public schools, where the kids are graduating with AA degrees, utilizing places like, I think George Mason's come in and doing a cohort with us as far as, I know Nova does something like that. We can send someone. George Washington University, yes. George Washington does something like that to take care of the capacity issue. But we also run into an equity issue as far as the kids from the elementary school level, the kids of color, and others who are not represented in some of these meetings, and I'm representing them, who are getting off to a bad start as far as the elementary school level and being targeted and pushed into other avenues where they don't appreciate STEM or they don't appreciate other things. So again, the data, the number of kids, give us the answers. That's what we're looking for, the answers, the numbers.
So I think you bring up a good point about some of the other school divisions across this country that are doing very innovative things or having innovative approaches to learning, such as, Classrooms Without Walls, our partnership with the George Washington University, having these alternative pathways I think are going to be very important. In regards to our students of color, right, I think that, as we talk about certain inequities, it is our job to make sure that we're introducing our kids at younger ages to different pathways, right? And we do have some control over how, as our kids matriculate through Alexandria City Public Schools, we have some control over how they're going to have a peaked interest by the time they get to high school. And that's by exposing them in elementary, exposing them in the middle school. And that is one of the reasons why places like Port Kelly Elementary School, which is our STEM school, and Ferdinand T. Day, they are 1, high poverty schools, 2, very high black and brown students in both of those schools. And we should see those students continue on when they get to high school, or we haven't done our job, right? So it shouldn't be now all of a sudden we trained a school that was majority children of color that now have no interest 4 years later. That's something we're not doing. So I think that now we're being very intentional about that. I think we're woke as a school division, now. I think we have been before, but now we're saying it, and we're trying to do the right things for our kids. So, before, I think last year, and this is just me personally, I'm just going to give you my own personal thing, not as superintendent. Last year I was talking about how, certain programs could cause a certain nationality or a certain race go into a course, right? And as we went through this year, and we've been doing a lot of research and having several discussions, I had the epiphany in the fact that we can make sure that our students who are typically not represented in certain courses get the exposure earlier so that they have the foundational skills by the time they get to the high school. So when those doors are open, they are successful, and that we see the same diversity that we see in our current student demographics. We have to make sure we're starting sooner than later. And I think our approach before, and it's not just here in Alexandria, this is our approach to many school divisions across the country do this approach. They wait till high school to say, it's open enrollment, anybody can do whatever you want. Kids have to have interest before then. High school is too late. You know, we have to make sure at the elementary level we're exposing, we're giving them experiences, we're having, you know, experiential learning outside of the classroom so that we're piquing that interest. By the time they get to the high school, they are prepared and they're ready. And they're not feeling as if they're not good enough, they're not strong enough, there's no one like them in those particular classes. So that is something that is happening as of right now that we will see in the future. We'll reap the benefits later. But it takes a long process when you start from elementary school. That means you have to wait 5 to 7 years to see the results. And that's why a lot of superintendents who don't last 5 to 7 years across this country, 2.5 years is what a superintendent, unfortunately, that's how long you last. Hope that's not the case for me here in Alexandria, or we won't get the work done. But people, a lot of superintendents, my superintendent's colleagues, they want to do a quick fix before they leave. So easy route is to open the doors to everybody in 9th grade. That's not the best route, and that's not how you make sure that the kids are successful. So we're going to stop right here. It doesn't mean you can't continue to ask questions, but I want to make sure that, because we had our team come out to be able to talk to people more in an intimate format, and for you to ask, you know, your questions. We're going to display, so you can walk around all of these different displays as you see. These are different topics that you may want to talk about, and you may see something. You may want to talk about something that's not on one of these slides that you've already been through these slides with you all. So they're just reminding you of what we discussed today. But you will have an expert who was in this section to provide you with that feedback. To close, before we go into the open house portion of this session today, I just want to thank you all for coming out. You know, it is so important for us to remember as a community, if we don't come out and advocate and work collaboratively to do what's right for the future of our children, we, I believe, have failed as a community. It is our jobs to be advocates and to go out and speak on behalf of those who may not have a voice as well as our own. You know, and I know I signed up to be the superintendent to preach and talk for 16,000 kids, but we also have 2 biological children in our household. And I try to make sure that the decisions I make and the decisions I stand behind as a school division are just as good as I would want for our children, because I have to go home to my wife every night. So I do thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us this evening. And please continue to be candid and come out and join. We're having other sessions. We have some other sessions that are scheduled. So if you want to come out, it's going to be similar, but it may be different people. You may hear some different perspectives. I encourage you to come out or to watch us online, because all these are recorded for you to see. With that said, please come join us up front. Thank you.